In a galaxy where humans are considered the weakest species, one man's act of violence to protect a stranger will shatter every assumption about our kind and unlock a reward that will change the fate of humanity forever. Story overview. Marcus Chun, a human cargo handler on the multicultural space station Nexus Prime, witnesses the brutal assault of Zarath, a member of the telepathic Etherian race. When he intervenes and sheds blood defending her, he unknowingly triggers an ancient Etherian bond that grants him unprecedented telepathic abilities that will expose a galaxy-wide conspiracy and make him the most wanted being in known space. 5-part structure. Marcus witnesses Zarath being attacked by Krillon slavers in the station's lower levels despite being vastly outmatched. He fights desperately to protect her. His blood mingles with hers during the brutal fight unknown to Marcus. This blood mixing triggers an ancient Etherian ritual bond. Zarath escapes, while Marcus faces severe consequences from station security. Marcus recovers in medical bay. Experiencing strange mental phenomena, Zarath secretly visits him, explaining the telepathic bond they now share. She reveals that Etherians can only bond with beings of pure intent, something thought impossible with primitive humans. Marcus begins developing telepathic abilities that surpass even Etherian expectations. They discover someone is hunting Etherians across the galaxy using his new abilities. Marcus uncovers a conspiracy involving the Galactic Council. Etherians are being captured, and their telepathic essence harvested for a weapon the bond with Marcus has made Zarath incredibly powerful, and a prime target. They must flee Nexus Prime as both Council forces and alien bounty hunters converge. Marcus's human unpredictability becomes their greatest advantage. Marcus and Zarath go on the run across multiple worlds. They discover that the conspiracy reaches the highest levels of galactic government. Marcus's abilities continue evolving in ways that terrify even Zarath. They rescue other captured Etherians. Building a resistance network, the galactic community begins to realize that humans are far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Marcus leads a coordinated strike against the conspiracy's main facility. His unique human-Etherian bond allows him to amplify the telepathic abilities of all Etherians. The revelation of the conspiracy triggers galaxy-wide upheaval. Humanity's status in the galactic community is forever changed. Marcus must choose between power and the simple life. He once knew human exceptionalism through unexpected courage and adaptability, the power of sacrifice and protection of innocence, challenging preconceptions and stereotypes, the strength found in unlikely partnerships, moral courage in the face of overwhelming opposition. Hook *****. In a galaxy where humans are considered the weakest species, one man's act of violence to protect a stranger will shatter every assumption about our kind and unlock a reward that will change the fate of humanity forever. The metal corridors of Nexus Prime hummed with the constant vibration of massive cargo transporters moving through the station's lower levels. Marcus Chun wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided another shipment of rare earth minerals toward Bay 47. The work was backbreaking, but it paid enough to keep him fed and housed in one of the galaxy's most important trade stations. More importantly, it kept him invisible. Being human in the galactic community meant being overlooked. While other species boasted incredible strength, telepathic abilities, or advanced technology, humans were seen as barely above primitive. They were tolerated as manual laborers and merchants, but never taken seriously in matters of importance. Marcus had learned to appreciate that invisibility. It meant fewer questions, fewer problems, and fewer opportunities for trouble. The cargo bay stretched out before him like a mechanical cavern, filled with containers from a dozen different worlds. The air recycling system struggled with the mix of atmospheric preferences required by the various alien species that worked and traded here. Marcus had grown used to the slightly metallic taste that lingered in his mouth after long shifts. As he maneuvered the heavy cargo lifter around a corner, a sound made him freeze. It was a cry of pain, distinctly feminine, coming from one of the unused storage areas deeper in the bay. Marcus hesitated. The smart thing would be to mind his own business, report it to station security, and continue with his work. Getting involved in alien affairs never ended well for humans. The cry came again, followed by rough laughter and voices speaking in Krulon, a language Marcus had picked up during his years working the trade routes. The words chilled his blood. Hold her still. The buyer wants her intact, but a few bruises won't matter. Look at those markings. Pure Etherian bloodline. We'll get enough credits for her to buy our own ship. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. Etherians were one of the most peaceful species in known space, their entire culture built around telepathic harmony and emotional balance. They were also incredibly rare, with fewer than 1 million individuals scattered across the galaxy. The idea of someone enslaving an Etherian made his stomach turn. He should walk away, should call security, should do the smart, safe thing that would keep him alive and employed. Instead, Marcus found himself moving toward the storage area, his work boots silent on the metal flooring. The scene that greeted him when he peered around the corner made his blood boil. 3 Krulons, each easily twice his size and covered in the thick, armor-like skin that made their species nearly bulletproof, had cornered a young Etherian female. Her pale blue skin was marked with the intricate silver patterns that indicated high telepathic ability, and her large, dark eyes were wide with fear. One Krulon held her arms while another rummaged through a bag of restraining devices. The third was speaking into a communication device, probably arranging transport for their captive. The Etherian woman was trying to speak, her voice soft and melodic even in her terror, but the Krulons ignored her completely. Marcus knew he should run. 3 Krulons against 1 human was suicide. Their skin could deflect most small arms' fire. Their strength was legendary, and they had no qualms about killing anyone who interfered with their business. But as he watched the woman struggle helplessly against her captors, something inside him snapped. His hand found the plasma cutter on his tool belt. It was designed for cutting through ship hulls, not fighting, but it was all he had. Marcus took a deep breath, stepped into the storage area, and cleared his throat. Let her go. All 4 beings turned to stare at him. The Krulons burst into laughter while the Etherian woman's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and horror. She was probably wondering why this strange human was about to get himself killed for her sake. Marcus was wondering the same thing. Walk away, human, the largest Krulon growled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. This doesn't concern your kind. I'm making it my concern, Marcus replied, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. His heart was pounding so hard, he was sure everyone could hear it. The Krulon holding the communication device laughed again. Do you know what we do to humans who interfere with our business? I'm about to find out, Marcus said, raising the plasma cutter. The reaction was immediate. The Krulon nearest to him lunged forward with surprising speed for something so massive. Marcus barely managed to dodge, the alien's clawed hand missing his face by inches and leaving deep gouges in the metal wall behind him. He swung the plasma cutter in a wide arc, its superheated beam slicing through the Krulon's arm just below the elbow. The scream that followed was inhuman, a sound of rage and pain that echoed through the storage bay. Green blood sprayed across the floor as the Krulon stumbled backward, clutching his severed limb. The other 2 immediately released the Etherian woman and turned their full attention to Marcus. What followed was less a fight than a desperate struggle for survival. Marcus ducked, rolled, and ran as 2 enraged Krulons tried to tear him apart with their bare hands. His small size and agility were his only advantages, allowing him to slip between their grasps and avoid their crushing blows. The plasma cutter became his lifeline, its beam carving through alien flesh whenever he could get close enough to use it. The storage area became a war zone. Metal containers toppled as the Krulons crashed through them in their pursuit of the human who had dared to mutilate their companion. Sparks flew as mist swipes tore through electrical conduits. The air filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal and alien blood. Marcus managed to take down the second Krulon by severing the tendons in both his legs, sending the massive alien crashing to the floor. But the effort left him exposed to the third attacker, who caught him with a backhanded blow that sent him flying into a support beam. Pain exploded through his ribs, and he tasted blood in his mouth. As Marcus struggled to his feet, he saw the remaining Krulon advancing on him with murder in his eyes. The plasma cutter had been knocked from his hands and lay several meters away, far beyond his reach. This was it. He had saved the Etherian woman, but the cost would be his life. The Krulon raised his clawed hands for a killing blow, and Marcus closed his eyes, thinking of his sister back on Earth who would never know what happened to him. Then, he heard a sound that made no sense in the context of imminent death, a soft, musical voice calling his name. Marcus down. He dropped to the floor without thinking, and something passed over his head with a sound like singing metal. When he looked up, the attacking Krulon was standing perfectly still, a look of surprise on his reptilian face. Then, his head toppled from his shoulders, followed a moment later by his massive body. The Etherian woman stood behind where the Krulon had been, holding a piece of sharp metal debris that glowed with an impossible inner light. Her silver markings were blazing like stars against her blue skin, and her eyes held a power that took Marcus's breath away. "How did you?" he started to ask, then stopped as pain flared through his entire body. The adrenaline that had kept him moving during the fight was wearing off, and he was beginning to realize how badly he was hurt. The woman moved to his side with fluid grace, her hands glowing with the same inner light as the metal she had wielded. "You are injured. Let me help you. Security will be here soon." Marcus gasped, blood running from a cut on his scalp. "You need to run." "Not without you," she said firmly, kneeling beside him. "You risked your life for mine. Such courage must not go unrewarded." Her glowing hands touched his wounds, and Marcus felt something impossible happening. The pain began to fade, replaced by a warm, tingling sensation that spread through his entire body. But there was something else, something deeper and more profound than simple healing. Where her blood had mixed with his from their shared injuries, he felt a connection forming, like a bridge being built between two distant shores. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered. "What should have been done long ago," she replied, her voice filled with wonder. "You have proven yourself worthy of the greatest gift my people can bestow." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor outside the storage area. Station security was finally responding to the disturbance. The Etherian woman helped Marcus to his feet, her touch still carrying that strange, electric warmth. "I am Zarth of the Third Harmonic," she said formally. "And I am forever in your debt, Marcus Chun of Earth." "How do you know my name?" he asked, confused and still reeling from whatever she had done to him. She smiled, an expression of such beauty that it made his heart skip a beat. "I know much about you now. The bond we share will reveal all in time. But, for now, you must trust me. What we have begun here will change everything." The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by the harsh voices of station security officers. Zarth pressed something small and metallic into Marcus's hand, a communication device of some kind. "When you are ready to understand what has happened to you, activate this. I will find you." She moved toward a maintenance shaft that Marcus hadn't even noticed before. "Remember, Marcus Chun, courage is the rarest treasure in the galaxy, and today you have proven yourself richer than kings." With that, she vanished into the shaft just as the first security officers burst into the storage area. They found Marcus sitting among the bodies of 3 dead Krulons, holding a plasma cutter and looking like he had been through a war zone. The interrogation that followed was intense, but ultimately fruitless. Marcus stuck to a simple story. He had heard sounds of a struggle, investigated, and found the Krulons attacking someone. When they turned on him, he had defended himself. The security footage was mysteriously corrupted, showing only static during the crucial minutes of the fight. Without evidence of wrongdoing and faced with a human who had somehow managed to kill 3 Krulons in single combat, the security forces eventually released Marcus with a warning to be more careful about where he wandered during his shifts. The official report labeled it a failed kidnapping attempt with the victim escaping during the confusion. But Marcus knew better. As he returned to his quarters that night, his body aching despite Zarth's healing touch, he could feel something new stirring within him. It was like a second heartbeat, a rhythm that seemed to pulse in harmony with thoughts that weren't quite his own. The small communication device she had given him seemed to grow warm in his pocket whenever he thought about her. He had saved an alien woman from slavers, thinking it was just the right thing to do. But, as he lay in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling of his cramped quarters, Marcus began to understand that his simple act of courage had set something much larger in motion. The question was whether he was ready for whatever came next. Outside his window, the vast expanse of space stretched away to infinity, filled with stars and worlds he had never imagined visiting. But something told him that his days of invisible anonymity on Nexus Prime were coming to an end. The galaxy had taken notice of Marcus Chun, and there would be no going back to the shadows. In the darkness of his room, the communication device pulsed once with soft, blue light. Waiting. 3 days after the incident in the storage bay, Marcus began to understand that something fundamental had changed within him. It started with the dreams, vivid, impossible visions that felt more real than waking life. He found himself standing on alien worlds he had never seen, breathing atmospheres that should have killed him, and understanding languages he had never learned. The medical bay where he spent his mandatory recovery time became a prison of confusion. Dr. Vexhai, the Altarian physician assigned to his case, ran test after test, but all the results came back normal. Physically, Marcus was healing at a remarkable rate. The cuts and bruises that should have kept him bedridden for weeks were fading by the hour. But the changes he felt inside himself couldn't be detected by any medical scanner. During his 3rd night in the medical bay, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling when he felt it. A gentle pressure against his mind, like someone knocking on a door he didn't know existed. The sensation was accompanied by a familiar warmth, the same feeling he had experienced when Zarth had touched his wounds. "Do not be afraid," a voice whispered directly into his thoughts. "I am here." Marcus bolted upright in bed, looking around the empty medical bay. He was alone, but the voice had been as clear as if someone had spoken directly into his ear. "Zarth?" he thought, feeling foolish for even attempting mental communication. "Yes," came the immediate reply, filled with gentle amusement. "You learn quickly. This is good." A shimmering outline began to form in the chair beside his bed, gradually solidifying into the familiar figure of the Etherian woman. She looked exactly as he remembered. Pale blue skin marked with intricate silver patterns, large dark eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, and an aura of calm that made the sterile medical bay feel almost peaceful. "You're not really here," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am here in every way that matters," Zarth replied, her physical voice now audible as well as her mental one. "The bond we share transcends mere physical presence. Through it, I can manifest wherever you are, as long as our connection remains strong." Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, studying her carefully. She looked solid, real, but there was something ethereal about her presence, as if she was made of light and shadow rather than flesh and blood. "What exactly did you do to me?" he asked. "I'm having dreams about places I've never been, understanding languages I don't know. Sometimes I can hear thoughts that aren't mine." Zarth's expression grew serious. "You experienced the Kethmiran, the blood bond. It is the most sacred ritual of my people, performed only when an Etherian encounters a being of pure intent and selfless courage. The bond grants the worthy individual a portion of our telepathic abilities, creating a permanent connection between souls." "I don't understand," Marcus said, running a hand through his hair. "You barely knew me. How could you determine that I was worthy of something so important?" "The act itself was proof enough," she replied. "You had nothing to gain by protecting me. In fact, by your society's standards, you had everything to lose. Yet when faced with my suffering, you chose to risk your life for a stranger. Such selflessness is the rarest quality in the universe." Marcus stood and began pacing the small medical bay, his mind reeling with the implications. "But I'm human. We're not telepathic. How is this even possible?" Zarth's eyes followed his movement with interest. "That is what makes this so extraordinary. The Kethmiran has never been performed with a human before because we believed your species lacked the necessary mental flexibility. But your mind has not only accepted the bond, it has embraced it. Your telepathic abilities are already stronger than those of many Etherians who have trained for centuries." As if to prove her point, Marcus suddenly became aware of the thoughts emanating from other beings throughout the medical center. Dr. Vexhai was in his office 3 rooms away, reviewing Marcus's test results and wondering why a human's healing rate was so dramatically accelerated. Two Centaurian traders in the adjacent recovery room were planning to cheat the customs office on their next shipment. A Terran maintenance worker was worried about his gambling debts. The cacophony of thoughts hit Marcus like a physical blow, forcing him to grab the bed rail for support. "Make it stop," he gasped. "I can hear everyone." Zara TH was beside him instantly, her hands on his shoulders, radiating calm. "Focus on my voice. Build a wall in your mind between your thoughts and theirs. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, surrounded by thick barriers that nothing can penetrate." Marcus followed her guidance, visualizing the walls she described. Slowly, the flood of alien thoughts receded until only her mental voice remained clear. "Better?" she asked. He nodded, still shaken by the experience. "Is it always like that?" "You will learn to control it," she assured him. "The bond gives you access to incredible power, but, like any tool, it requires training to use safely. With time, you will be able to shield your mind automatically while still accessing the thoughts of others when necessary." Marcus returned to his bed, his mind spinning with questions. "Why is this so important? You said it was the greatest gift your people could bestow. What does that mean?" Zara TH's expression darkened, and, for the first time since appearing, she looked afraid. "Because my people are dying, Marcus. The Etherian population has been declining for decades, and we recently discovered why. Someone has been hunting us." "Hunting you? Who?" "We don't know yet," she admitted. "Etherians have been disappearing from colonies across the galaxy. At first, we thought it was random crime or natural disasters. But the pattern suggests something more sinister. Someone is specifically targeting our kind, and they're very good at covering their tracks." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What does this have to do with me?" "The Kethmiron creates more than just a telepathic bond," Zara TH explained. "It also enhances the abilities of both participants. Since performing the ritual with you, my own telepathic powers have increased dramatically. I can sense things that were hidden from me before, reach across greater distances, and penetrate mental barriers that would have stopped me previously." "And what have you sensed?" "Danger," she said simply. "The same entities that have been hunting Etherians are now aware of our bond. They know what we've done, and they want to study it, or destroy it." As if summoned by her words, Marcus felt a new presence pressing against his consciousness. This one was different from the gentle touch of Zara TH's mind or the chaotic chatter of the medical center's occupants. It was cold, calculating, and utterly alien in its structure. Zara TH stiffened, her silver markings beginning to glow. "They've found us," she whispered. "Who?" Marcus asked, but even as the word left his lips, he knew. The presence in his mind felt wrong in every possible way, like static made sentient. It probed at his thoughts with surgical precision, seeking something specific. "Council agents," Zara TH said, her form beginning to flicker as she struggled to maintain her projection. "The Galactic Council has been involved in the disappearances. They're here." The lights in the medical bay dimmed as an emergency alert echoed through the station's corridors. Through the small window, Marcus could see unmarked ships docking at the station's primary ports, sleek, black vessels that carried no identifying markings but radiated an aura of official authority. "You have to run," Zara TH said urgently, her image becoming more translucent by the second. "They can't capture you. If they discover the full extent of what the bond has given you, they'll use that knowledge to hunt down every remaining Etherian in the galaxy." "What about you?" Marcus asked, grabbing his clothes from the bedside locker. "I'll be safe for now," she assured him. "My physical form is hidden in the outer colonies. But our mental connection makes you a target. As long as you remain free, they can't fully analyze what we've accomplished." Marcus dressed quickly, his enhanced senses already picking up the approach of armed figures in the corridors outside. The station's security forces were being quietly replaced by council operatives, their movements coordinated with military precision. "How do I get out of here?" he asked. Zara TH's fading form smiled. "Use what the bond has given you. Trust your instincts and reach out with your mind. You'll find allies in the most unexpected places." As if to prove her point, Marcus suddenly became aware of a maintenance worker named Jektar who was approaching the medical bay. The Regellian's thoughts were filled with suspicion about the new arrivals, and concern for the human who had somehow killed 3 Krulons. More importantly, Jektar knew about hidden passages throughout the station that weren't on any official blueprints. The maintenance worker, Marcus, said. He wants to help. See? You're learning already, Zara Th replied, her voice now barely audible. Remember, Marcus, the bond between us cannot be broken by distance or death. Wherever you go, I will be with you. And, together, we will uncover the truth about what's happening to my people. Her image faded just as the door to the medical bay opened, revealing a grizzled Rigelian in maintenance coveralls who looked around nervously before stepping inside. You're the human who fought the Krulons, Jektar said without preamble. The one they're looking for. Marcus nodded, his new abilities allowing him to sense the workers' genuine concern and desire to help. They want to capture me for questioning. Not questioning, Jektar corrected grimly. Dissection. I've seen what the council does to specimens they find interesting. Come with me if you want to live. As they slipped into a maintenance tunnel behind a hidden panel, Marcus felt the communication device Zara Th had given him pulse against his chest. The small piece of technology had become warm to the touch, resonating with the telepathic energy that now flowed through his mind. Behind them, he could hear the sound of the medical bay being searched, followed by angry voices when the searchers found it empty. The hunt had begun, but Marcus was no longer the same defenseless human who had wandered into that storage bay 3 days ago. He had become something new, something that the galaxy wasn't prepared for. The question now was whether he could survive long enough to understand what that meant, and what it would cost him. In the darkness of the maintenance tunnel, guided by an alien who trusted him for reasons he was only beginning to understand, Marcus Chin took his first steps into a larger universe. Behind them, the Council agents spread through Nexus Prime like a plague, searching for the human who had dared to bond with an Etherian. They would not find him easily. The hunt would take them across star systems, and through dangers they couldn't imagine. And by the time it was over, the galaxy would never be the same. The cargo freighter Nebula's Edge was 3 days out from Nexus Prime when Marcus finally began to understand the true scope of what he had stumbled into. Hidden in the ship's lower cargo hold among containers of agricultural supplies bound for the frontier colonies, he had spent the time learning to control his new abilities while Jektar provided cover for his presence aboard the vessel. The Rigelian maintenance worker had contacts throughout the smuggling networks that operated in the shadows between legitimate trade routes. For the right price and a good story about escaping corporate debt collectors, passage could be arranged on ships that asked no questions and kept no official records. Marcus was grateful for the help, even though he knew it placed Jektar at considerable risk. During the long hours in the cargo hold, Marcus practiced the mental exercises that Zara Th had taught him through their bond. She appeared to him regularly now, her telepathic projection becoming more solid and detailed as his abilities strengthened. Through her guidance, he learned to filter the constant stream of thoughts from the ship's crew, to project his consciousness across distances, and to access information buried deep within alien minds. It was during one of these training sessions that Marcus discovered something that changed everything. Reach out with your mind, Zara Th instructed, her translucent form seated cross-legged beside him in the cramped cargo space. Feel for other Etherian presences in this sector. Marcus closed his eyes and extended his consciousness beyond the ship's hull, searching the vast emptiness of space for the distinctive mental signatures of her people. At first, he found nothing but the scattered thoughts of passing vessels and the wild, chaotic minds of the space-dwelling creatures that fed on cosmic radiation. Then, he felt it, a cluster of Etherian minds, their telepathic emanations dim and distorted by what felt like interference or barriers. They were close, perhaps only a few light years away, but something was wrong. The mental patterns were fragmented, filled with pain and fear. I found them, Marcus said, opening his eyes. But they're in trouble. Zara Th's expression grew grim. Show me. Marcus reached for her hand, allowing their bond to merge their perceptions. Through the connection, Zara Th experienced what he had sensed, the location of a hidden facility, the presence of captive Etherians, and something else that made her gasp in horror. Harvesting, she whispered. They're harvesting our telepathic essence. The images that flooded through their shared connection were nightmare fuel. Marcus saw Etherians connected to machines that drained their mental energy, their consciousness slowly extracted and stored in crystalline matrices. The process was killing them, but whoever was responsible didn't care about preserving the donors, only about capturing their abilities. "This is what's been happening to your people," Marcus said, the reality of the situation hitting him like a physical blow. "Someone is turning telepaths into weapons." "Not just weapons," Zara-Th corrected, her mental voice filled with anguish. "They're creating artificial telepaths. The essence they steal from us is being implanted into other beings, creating soldiers who can read minds, project thoughts, and manipulate consciousness at will." Marcus felt a cold rage building within him, amplified by the bond he shared with Zara-Th until it became an almost physical force. The injustice of it, the casual destruction of an entire species for military advantage, triggered something primal in his human psyche. "Where is this facility?" he asked. "Based on the mental emanations you detected, it's in the Kepler Drift, a region of space controlled by the Hegemony Mining Consortium." "But, Marcus, you can't possibly." "Can't what?" he interrupted. "Can't stop them? Can't save your people? Watch me." Through their bond, Zara-Th felt the determination radiating from his mind, backed by a peculiarly human refusal to accept impossible odds. She had studied human psychology as part of her research into the species, but experiencing it firsthand through telepathic contact was entirely different. The sheer stubborn tenacity of the human spirit was unlike anything in Etherian culture. "You're thinking like a warrior," she observed. "My people have been artists and philosophers for millennia. We've forgotten how to fight." "Good thing I haven't," Marcus replied grimly. Over the next several hours, they developed a plan that was equal parts desperate and audacious. Marcus would infiltrate the harvesting facility while Zara-Th used her enhanced abilities to coordinate with any surviving Etherians they could contact. The bond between them would allow real-time communication and shared sensory input, effectively making them a two-person army with telepathic coordination. The first challenge was getting close to the facility without being detected. The Hegemony Mining Consortium controlled the Kepler Drift through a network of automated defense platforms and patrol ships, all designed to keep claim jumpers and pirates away from their valuable asteroid mining operations. What they didn't expect was someone using stolen shipping manifests and forged identification codes to pose as a maintenance contractor. Jektar proved invaluable in this regard. His years working on various stations had given him contacts throughout the legitimate and semi-legitimate shipping industries. Within hours of Marcus explaining what he needed, the Rigelian had arranged for falsified work orders that would get him aboard a supply ship bound for the consortium's facilities. "You're insane," Jektar told him as they prepared to transfer to the supply ship at a remote rendezvous point. "Even if you get inside, what can one human do against a military installation?" "More than you might think," Marcus replied, feeling Zara-Th's presence strengthening in his mind as they approached their destination. "I'm not going in alone." The supply ship Fortune's Favor was a typical commercial hauler, its crew focused on completing their delivery run and getting paid. Marcus blended in easily with the other contractors and technicians making the journey to the consortium's facilities. His enhanced senses allowed him to monitor the thoughts of his fellow passengers, ensuring that none of them suspected his true purpose. As they approached the Kepler Drift, Marcus got his first visual confirmation of what they were dealing with. The harvesting facility was massive, a sprawling complex built into and around a large asteroid, bristling with defensive weapons and communication arrays. Smaller installations dotted the surrounding area, connected by a network of transport tubes that allowed rapid movement of personnel and materials. Through the viewport, Marcus could see ships arriving and departing regularly. Some carried mining equipment and raw materials, but others had the sleek, unmarked appearance of military vessels. Whatever was happening here was important enough to warrant significant resources and security. "I can feel them," Zara-Th's voice whispered in his mind. "My people are here, in the central complex. They're alive, but barely. We don't have much time." Marcus acknowledged her warning silently, his mind already shifting into the focused state he had learned to associate with his enhanced abilities. As the supply ship docked with the facility's receiving bay, he prepared to become something the galaxy had never seen before, a human with the telepathic abilities of an Etherian and the stubborn determination to use them. The docking procedures were routine, with the facility's crew efficiently unloading cargo while contractors dispersed to their assigned work areas. Marcus's forged documentation identified him as a specialist in atmospheric recycling systems, which gave him access to the facility's environmental controls and justified his presence in areas that might otherwise be restricted. As he made his way through the facility's corridors, Marcus's enhanced senses painted a detailed picture of the operation. The asteroid had been extensively hollowed out and converted into a research and production center. The outer levels housed mining operations and legitimate businesses that provided cover for the facility's true purpose. Deeper inside, heavily guarded laboratories and holding areas contained the real work. The central laboratory is 27 levels down, Zarth informed him. Her consciousness merged with his as she analyzed the facility's layout through his eyes. That's where they're keeping the captured Etherians. Marcus found a maintenance shaft that would allow him to bypass most of the security checkpoints. But, as he prepared to descend toward the laboratory levels, he encountered something unexpected. The shaft was already occupied by someone else, a young human woman in technician's coveralls who was climbing upward with desperate urgency. She froze when she saw him, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Marcus immediately sensed that she was running from something, her mind filled with images of horror that made his stomach turn. Without thinking, he reached out telepathically to assess the situation. The contact revealed her identity immediately, Dr. Sarah Chun, a xenobiologist who had been working at the facility under the assumption that she was participating in legitimate research. The surname was a coincidence. There were millions of Chins scattered across human space. But her recent discovery of the facility's true purpose had turned her from researcher into refugee. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Neither are you," Marcus replied quietly. "You've seen what they're doing to the Etherians." Her eyes widened further. "How could you possibly know that?" Instead of explaining, Marcus extended his hand. "I'm here to stop it. Help me, and I'll get you out of here alive." Through telepathic contact, Marcus quickly shared enough of the truth to convince Dr. Chun that he was genuinely trying to help the captive Etherians. Her knowledge of the facility's layout and security protocols would be invaluable, while his abilities gave them a chance to actually succeed. "This is unexpected," Zarth observed. But perhaps fortunate. She knows things that we do not. Together, the three of them, Marcus physically present, Dr. Chun providing local knowledge, and Zarth contributing telepathic reconnaissance, began their descent toward the heart of the facility. What they found there would confirm their worst fears and set in motion events that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The harvesting operation was even more extensive than they had imagined, with implications that reached far beyond the exploitation of a single species. The technology being developed here could change the nature of warfare itself, giving whoever controlled it the ability to read minds, manipulate thoughts, and turn entire populations into unwilling servants. And at the center of it all was a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of the Galactic Council itself. The central laboratory of the harvesting facility was a vision of sterile horror that would haunt Marcus's dreams for years to come. Dozens of Etherians floated in transparent cylindrical tanks, their pale blue skin marked with the silver patterns that indicated their telepathic abilities. Tubes and wires connected them to machines that pulsed with sickly light, slowly draining the essence of their consciousness into crystalline storage matrices. Many of the tanks were dark, their occupants reduced to empty husks that had been discarded like used equipment. Marcus felt Zarth's anguish through their bond as she recognized friends and family members among the victims. The sight triggered something primal in his human psychology, a rage so pure and focused that it temporarily overwhelmed his telepathic abilities. "We're too late," Dr. Chun whispered, her face pale with shock. "Most of them are already gone." "Not all," Zarth corrected, her mental voice tight with controlled emotion. "I can sense 12 survivors. They're barely alive, but their consciousness remains intact. Marcus studied the laboratory's layout through his enhanced senses, simultaneously monitoring the thoughts of the facility's personnel and analyzing their security measures. The operation was more sophisticated than he had imagined. This wasn't just crude harvesting, but a carefully orchestrated research program designed to understand and replicate telepathic abilities. The control center is there, Dr. Chen said, pointing to an elevated platform overlooking the tanks. That's where they monitor the extraction process and store the collected essence. If we can shut down the machines, we're not just shutting them down, Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying a cold determination that made both women look at him with surprise. We're destroying this entire operation and rescuing every surviving Etherian. Marcus, the facility has over 300 personnel and military-grade defenses, Zarth warned. Even with our abilities, we cannot fight them all. We don't have to fight them all, Marcus replied, his mind already formulating a plan that drew on both human tactical thinking and Etherian telepathic advantages. We just have to be smarter than they are. The first phase of his plan was psychological warfare. Using his enhanced telepathic abilities, Marcus began projecting thoughts into the minds of the facility's security personnel. Not commands or obvious manipulations, but subtle suggestions that made them question what they were seeing and hearing. Guards began reporting false alarms, technicians started doubting their equipment readings, and communications became unreliable as operators second-guessed their own transmissions. While the facility's personnel dealt with this growing confusion, Marcus and Dr. Chen made their way to the control center. The platform was protected by energy barriers and automated defenses, but Dr. Chen's access codes still worked. Her escape had been so recent that no one had thought to revoke her clearances. The control center's displays showed the full scope of the operation, and what Marcus saw there made his blood run cold. The Kepler Drift facility was just one of dozens scattered throughout the galaxy. Thousands of Etherians had been captured and processed, their telepathic essence harvested to create artificial telepods for military use. Look at this, Dr. Chen said, her voice hollow with horror. She had accessed a classified database that detailed the project's ultimate goals. They're not just creating telepathic soldiers. They're planning to implant the harvested essence into political leaders, military commanders, and influential figures throughout the galaxy. Mind control on a galactic scale, Zarth observed. With enough artificial telepaths in positions of power, they could manipulate entire civilizations. Marcus felt his rage crystallizing into something colder and more dangerous, a determination to not just stop this facility, but to expose the entire conspiracy to the galaxy. But first, he had to save the surviving Etherians and ensure that their sacrifice would not be meaningless. Can we reverse the process? He asked Dr. Chen. Return the harvested essence to its original owners? She studied the control systems, her scientific training helping her parse the complex displays. Maybe. The essence is stored in a coherent state for several hours after extraction to allow for quality control testing. If we can identify which matrices contain essence from the surviving victims. Do it, Marcus said, his enhanced senses detecting approaching security forces. The confusion he had sown was beginning to fade as the facility's personnel realized they were dealing with a genuine intrusion. While Dr. Chen worked to reprogram the harvesting machines, Marcus expanded his telepathic reach to its maximum extent. Through Zarth's guidance, he made contact with the surviving Etherians in the tanks, their weakened consciousness responding to his mental touch with desperate hope. We're here to help you. He projected to them. Stay strong. We're going to get you out. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 12 telepathic minds reaching out to his, their combined mental energy flowing through the bond he shared with Zarth and amplifying his abilities to levels that should have been impossible. Suddenly, Marcus could sense thoughts from across the entire facility, monitoring hundreds of minds simultaneously while maintaining perfect clarity and control. Impossible, Zarth whispered in amazement. No single being should be able to channel that much telepathic energy. Maybe no single being, Marcus replied, understanding flooding through him. But we're not single beings anymore. We're something new. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the laboratory as security forces breached the lower levels. Marcus felt their hostile intentions long before they came into visual range, giving him time to prepare countermeasures. Using his expanded telepathic abilities, he began planting false sensory inputs in their minds. Phantom sounds that led them away from his position, illusory corridors that didn't exist, and equipment malfunctions that never actually occurred. Got it, Dr. Chin announced. The reversal process is starting. It'll take about 10 minutes to complete the return of essence to the surviving victims. 10 minutes we don't have, *Zarth warned. I'm detecting military ships approaching the facility. They know something is wrong. Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks before when he was a simple cargo handler on Nexus Prime. Instead of trying to escape with the survivors, he chose to make a stand that would expose the conspiracy to the entire galaxy. Dr. Chun, can you access the facility's main communication array? She looked at him in confusion. Yes, but why? Because I'm going to broadcast what we've found here to every news network and government in known space, Marcus replied, his mind already reaching out to establish connections with communication satellites and relay stations throughout the sector. The galaxy needs to know what's been done to the Etherians. What followed was perhaps the most audacious act of whistleblowing in galactic history. Using his telepathic abilities to bypass security protocols and authentication systems, Marcus seized control of communication networks across multiple star systems. Through thousands of channels simultaneously, he began broadcasting the evidence Dr. Chun had compiled, recordings of the harvesting process, documentation of the conspiracy's scope, and real-time footage of the tortured Etherians. The reaction was immediate and explosive. News networks scrambled to verify the information while government officials tried to suppress it. Military commanders demanded explanations while diplomatic corps struggled to maintain interspecies relations. Within hours, the story was spreading across the galaxy faster than any attempt to contain it could follow. But Marcus paid a terrible price for this act of exposure. The effort of maintaining telepathic contact with so many minds while simultaneously coordinating the rescue operation and broadcasting evidence began to burn out his enhanced abilities. Blood ran from his nose and ears as his human brain struggled to process telepathic energies that would challenge even a full Etherian. You're killing yourself, *Zarth warned, her concern flooding through their bond. No mind can sustain this level of telepathic activity. It's working, Marcus replied, his voice strained but determined. The truth is spreading. Even if they stop us here, it's too late to cover this up. As if to prove his point, explosions began echoing through the facility as government forces arrived to secure or destroy the evidence. But Marcus had anticipated this response, using his telepathic abilities to guide rescue ships operated by independent journalists and humanitarian organizations to the facility's coordinates. The final phase of the operation was pure chaos. Military forces loyal to the conspiracy fought desperately to maintain secrecy, while rescue teams and journalists documented everything they could find. The surviving Etherians, their essence restored and their strength slowly returning, added their own testimonies to the growing pile of evidence. Marcus collapsed as the last of the evidence was transmitted, his telepathic abilities finally overwhelmed by the sustained effort. But, as Dr. Chun helped him to his feet, he could see through the laboratory's viewports that they had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. Ships from dozens of different governments and organizations surrounded the facility, their combined presence ensuring that the truth could not be suppressed. We did it, *Zarth whispered, her mental voice filled with exhaustion but also hope. My people are free, and the galaxy knows what was done to us. This is just the beginning, Marcus replied, leaning heavily on Dr. Chin for support. Now we have to deal with the people responsible for all this. As rescue teams arrived to evacuate the surviving Etherians and secure the facility's evidence, Marcus realized that his life had been forever changed. He was no longer an anonymous cargo handler who could disappear into the shadows. He had become a symbol of human courage, of interspecies cooperation, and of the power of individuals to challenge systemic injustice. The galaxy would never be the same, and Neither would he. But, as he watched the freed Etherians being reunited with their rescuers, Marcus knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. The hunt was over, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months after the fall of the harvesting facility, Marcus Chin stood before the Galactic Assembly as the most unlikely witness in the history of interspecies law. The massive chamber on Centauri Prime contained representatives from over 200 worlds, their attention focused on the human who had exposed one of the largest conspiracies in galactic history. The proceedings had been extraordinary in every sense. What had begun as an investigation into the illegal harvesting of Etherian telepaths had expanded into a comprehensive examination of corruption throughout the Galactic Council itself. Evidence gathered from dozens of facilities had revealed a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government, military, and corporate leadership. Marcus's testimony was crucial not just because of his role in exposing the conspiracy, but because of what he had become. The bond with Zara-TH had evolved during their ordeal, creating something unprecedented in galactic history, a human-Etherian hybrid consciousness that could perceive truth through telepathic contact. His abilities made him impossible to deceive, a living lie detector whose word carried weight that traditional evidence could not match. "State your name and occupation for the record," requested Chancellor Vextar, the Altarian who had been appointed to oversee the proceedings after 3 previous chancellors were found to be complicit in the conspiracy. "Marcus Chun of Earth, formerly a cargo handler on Nexus Prime," Marcus replied, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Currently serving as special investigator for the Etherian Recovery Commission." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The transformation of a humble cargo worker into one of the galaxy's most influential figures had become the stuff of legend, inspiring countless stories and documentaries. But the reality was far more complex than the popular narrative suggested. Marcus had paid a significant price for his abilities. The telepathic bond that gave him such extraordinary power also made him a target for anyone who wanted to exploit or eliminate his capabilities. He lived under constant protection now, his life forever changed by a moment of courage in a storage bay that seemed like a lifetime ago. "Mr. Chun," Chancellor Vextar continued, "you have claimed that the conspiracy known as Project Synthesis involved not only the harvesting of Etherian telepathic abilities, but also plans for mind control on a galactic scale. Please explain how you came to this conclusion." Marcus had given this testimony dozens of times to various investigating committees, but it never became easier. Each recounting forced him to relive the horror of what they had discovered, the systematic destruction of an entire species for military advantage, and the willingness of galactic leaders to sacrifice entire civilizations for power. Through telepathic contact with the surviving victims and analysis of the harvested essence, Marcus explained, his enhanced senses monitoring the thoughts of the assembled representatives. Even here, in the most secure facility in the galaxy, he could detect traces of guilt and fear from delegates who had been aware of the conspiracy, but done nothing to stop it. The artificial telepaths created from Etherian essence weren't just intended as weapons, he continued. They were designed to be implanted with the consciousness patterns of key political and military figures, creating perfect sleeper agents who could manipulate entire governments from within. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. While this information had been presented in classified briefings, hearing it stated publicly for the first time created a visible wave of horror among the assembly. "They're beginning to understand the scope of what was planned," Zara-TH observed. Her consciousness merged with his as it had been for months. The bond between them had evolved far beyond what either had imagined possible, creating a partnership that functioned on levels that traditional science couldn't explain. Chancellor Vextar called for order, then directed Marcus to continue. "What evidence do you have to support these claims?" Marcus activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber with documented evidence, communication logs, experimental data, and testimony from the conspiracy's victims and perpetrators. But the most compelling evidence was his own ability to verify truth through telepathic contact. "I invite any member of this assembly to submit to telepathic verification," Marcus announced, a challenge that had become his signature move during the investigation. I can confirm the truth or falsehood of any statement through direct mental contact. The offer was both powerful and controversial. While Marcus had proven his abilities countless times, many representatives remained uncomfortable with the idea of telepathic examination. The very concept challenged fundamental assumptions about privacy and individual autonomy that formed the basis of galactic law. That will not be necessary. Chancellor Vextar replied diplomatically. The evidence you have presented has been independently verified through conventional means. But Marcus was already sensing something that made his blood run cold. Among the assembled representatives, he detected the distinctive mental signatures of artificial telepaths, beings whose consciousness had been enhanced with harvested Etherian essence. The conspiracy wasn't dead. It had simply adapted to the new circumstances. There are at least 12 artificial telepaths in this chamber. He informed Zarth silently. They're monitoring our testimony and probably planning countermeasures. Should we expose them? She asked. Marcus considered the options. Revealing the presence of artificial telepaths would cause chaos and potentially violence in the assembly chamber. But allowing them to continue operating undetected could undermine the entire investigation. Chancellor, Marcus said aloud, his voice carrying the authority that had made him one of the galaxy's most respected figures. I'm detecting the presence of artificial telepaths among the assembled representatives. The conspiracy has agents operating within this very chamber. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Security forces flooded the chamber, while representatives demanded to know who among them had been compromised. The artificial telepaths, their cover blown, abandoned any pretense of concealment and began a desperate attempt to escape. What followed was unlike anything in the history of galactic politics. Marcus, his abilities amplified by his bond with Zarth and the support of surviving Etherians throughout the galaxy, engaged in telepathic combat with the artificial telepaths while security forces struggled to maintain order in the chamber. The battle was fought on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical confrontation in the chamber itself, telepathic warfare in the realm of consciousness, and information warfare as both sides tried to control the narrative being broadcast to billions of beings throughout the galaxy. Marcus's human unpredictability proved decisive. Where Etherian telepathic techniques were based on harmony and balance, his approach was chaotic and aggressive, drawing on emotional reserves and tactical thinking that the artificial telepaths couldn't counter effectively. One by one, he overwhelmed their defenses and exposed their true identities. Ladies, gentlemen, and sentient beings of the assembly, Marcus announced as the last artificial telepath was subdued. You have just witnessed proof that the conspiracy we've been investigating is still active. These agents were placed here to monitor our progress and sabotage any attempt at justice for their victims. The exposure of active conspiracy agents within the Galactic Assembly itself finally convinced even the most skeptical representatives that drastic action was necessary. Over the following days, emergency sessions were held to authorize unprecedented investigative powers and implement safeguards against telepathic manipulation. But the real victory came in the form of systemic change that went far beyond punishing the conspirators. The Etherian Recovery Commission was granted permanent status and funding dedicated to rebuilding the telepathic species and preventing similar genocides in the future. New laws were enacted to protect telepathic beings and regulate research into consciousness manipulation. Most importantly, humanity's status in the galactic community was forever transformed. What had begun with one man's act of courage to protect a stranger had evolved into recognition that humans brought unique capabilities to interspecies cooperation. The combination of human adaptability and determination with other species' specialized abilities created possibilities that none could achieve alone. Standing in the assembly chamber as the final votes were tallied, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. He had lost his anonymity, his simple life, and his assumption that individuals couldn't make a difference in the vast complexity of galactic politics. But he had gained something far more valuable, proof that courage and compassion could triumph over systematic evil. What will you do now? Zarth asked through their bond. You could have any position you want in the new government structure. Marcus smiled, thinking of the offer that had been made to him just that morning. Director of the new Interspecies Cooperation Initiative, with the authority to prevent future conspiracies and promote understanding between different species. It was exactly the kind of position that could make a real difference in the galaxy. "I think I'll take that job," he replied. "Someone needs to make sure this never happens again." "And us?" she asked, referring to their unprecedented bond. "We'll figure it out as we go," Marcus said. "That seems to be what humans do best." As the assembly session concluded and representatives began the complex process of implementing the new legislation, Marcus walked through corridors that had once seemed impossibly grand to a simple cargo handler. Now they felt like the beginning of something new, a galaxy where courage was valued over cynicism, where different species could work together as equals, and where individuals could still make a difference. The story of Marcus Chun and Zara-Th would be told for generations, inspiring countless beings to believe that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they chose to act with courage and compassion. But for Marcus, the real reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, Etherian children were growing up free because one human had decided to do the right thing. In a universe where humans had once been dismissed as irrelevant primitives, Marcus Chun had proven that courage was the most valuable resource of all. And that reward, the transformation of his entire species' place in the galactic community, was beyond anything he could have imagined when he first heard a cry for help in a storage bay on Nexus Prime. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again,